Yeah, so what we're talking about now is our parents, and Dr. Franz and I are talking about how we're very different holistically. I'm very different, she's very different, and that's why we want to do these videos. We want to show that what we're doing in this town is very different than most therapists and most doctors, which is why we're coming together here. And Parker is our common, right, our common motivation. He's the one that kind of linked us together. My son was very sick at a very young age, and Dr. Franz really took the time to holistically see him, almost in areas that she didn't quite understand, which I think was beautiful. And we both kind of understood together and learned together. And the one thing we're kind of talking about now is parents, and how, you know, sometimes they think they're doing all the right things, and we love our parents, and maybe they are. But that inner working piece, that when they grew up, right? And they're treating their kids the way they would have needed growing up, but that's not what the child needs.
They still don't want to use the dysfunctional. One of the things I practice, I need to practice more, but is remove the words right and wrong, good and bad from the vocabulary.
Yeah, that makes
remove
sense.
it and replace it with, was that useful? Was that not useful? Was that functional? Was it dysfunctional? Did that make you feel good? Did it make you feel bad? What did you learn? And it takes so much of the guilt, the shame, and the blame out of it. Okay?
Yes.
I'm not, I didn't do that good. And it's like, but did you do it? And I mean, just tips, because it's very easy to program the children and to set them up. And that was another thing that was very powerful for me to learn, is that I can say hello to you, and you're like, okay. And I go, what's wrong? You go, well, what I heard was, hello, you hateful little runt. And I go, all I said was hello. Okay. So that comes from more deep-seated programming or different things. I mean, that's a very big exaggeration.
Yeah.
How do you get that from hello? And I go, oh, it was just a story.
But in their filter bubble, in their story, that's what they see. And I think sometimes my parents don't understand that, and then they model behavior. So they think, well, I do everything for my child. And I'm like, okay, that's a mistake. Because then your child is going to grow up and do everything for everyone else. And I think they get a little mixy. I had a client on my couch who was in a little bit of an abusive relationship with her boyfriend and wasn't feeling very good about the whole situation. And I'm like, well, who are you talking to? I'm talking to my mom. I'm like, awesome. What does mom say? Mom says I need to leave this relationship. I'm like, okay. So what do you think about that? I think she's right. I go, tell me about mom. Well, mom put all of us first, never took care of herself. And I was like, and your mom's giving you advice? It's modeling, and I think my parents don't realize that too. That modeling this, I can tell you all day long, but if I'm modeling something different, that's what the child's going to, going to copy after, and that's a big realization, I think, sometimes for my parents. Well, there's that old saying: you want your children to follow in your footsteps. Unfortunately, they follow in the ones you thought you covered up. Ah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So they follow actions.
Not words. So if I don't take care of myself, I do this a lot with my parents, because they want to do the best, and they're giving everything, and they're not taking care of themselves. And I go, what you're teaching your child right now is to not take care of themselves. And that's a backwards message. That's a
very much.
It's a tricky little.
And it deals a lot with, you know, and well, I also like to look at things historically. So if you look at the 60s, okay, because many people grew up in, I grew up in the 60s, okay, and so and I like to watch Netflix, some of the historical shows, because they get it really accurate, and it's like, oh wow, I was a kid during that time, that was really going on, and it was very, there were many aspects, you know, it was a time of free love, and that was so immoral, and so this, and maybe it still is, but that was just the decade. You know, then the 70s, the 80s, you look at other people, where did they grow up? Did your grandparents grow up in the Depression, because that environment set a certain tone? And the historical part is important to just help you understand where they're coming from. Because my generation was very Victorian, very. And everything was just black and white, this was right, this was wrong. And so the kids get the message that's not functional long term. Okay, and what happens is self-love, that's where I'm going with this, self-love gets squashed. So if you don't love yourself enough to take care of yourself, then why is your child ever going to love themselves enough to take care of themselves? And you know, sacrifice can be nice and noble and a virtue, but not if it's the sacrifice of every single value that you're trying to teach somebody.
Yes. If I come from a broken home, some of my parents are like, well, I don't want to break their home, and I'm like, okay, do you want to raise them in a broken home?
Yeah.
So be mindful here of the choices that you're making, right? When it comes to your kids, if you're doing things, if you're sacrificing yourself for your children, then they will sacrifice themselves for people in their lives. So they won't have this ability that I was sacrificed for, therefore my self-esteem is higher.
Yeah.
They're going to do the opposite, which I think it's tricky, and I think sometimes parents don't realize that.
No, well, they don't, because again, you're a kid, you don't know. Okay, things happen, you make decisions, you create a story to protect yourself, and then that carries forward into adulthood. You don't know how to drop it. Now you're carrying baggage, you repeat the story to your own child, and then you wonder why they have issues. So it's breaking that generational pattern.
Generational patterns, absolutely. And here with my parents, a lot they will get here, and this is why, again, we're very, very different. Most therapists start and stop at the cognitive model, at the CBT piece, the cognitive behavior piece, the psychoeducation piece. They'll do that for the whole hour. And I feel like this is you too. The typical doctors will be here for that 20 minutes, but you and I are very different. We start at the model, right? That all of us do in this profession, and then we move to a deeper level of the model.
Yes.
Which is very different out here. That's what other therapists and other doctors aren't doing that. They look at the car, they look at the hood, they give you a little message and they move, and we open the hood, we pull the stuff out of the car that's not running the way we want it to, right? And we get deeper. And I think that's what sets us apart from the other people in this community.
And I go back to pregnancy. How was your pregnancy with this child?
So all the way back to the beginning.
All the way back. And this is interesting, and some people will go, oh, I can't believe that. This is a true story though. I had a child who had recurrent ear infections, and we were treating it with homeopathic remedies, and it just wasn't getting better. And the child just had chronic fluid. Nothing really bad, but just chronic fluid. And finally I said, what was your pregnancy like? And it was fine. And I said, but did something happen that caused you grief? And she goes, how did you know?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I went,
look at that.
Okay, you just told me. So what happened was, when a child grows in a soup in the body of function or dysfunction, that will follow them when they come out. Wow. So this child, there was a lot of just conflict. And the reason it wasn't getting better was they needed to deal with the conflict, because literally the child did not want to hear it. So when I gave the child a remedy for grief from the mother, the ears cleared up.
That is amazing. And that's the kind of work that I think is just miraculous, when we can see beyond, the conversation behind the conversation, or the patterns behind the pattern. And again, I don't, you have that sense activated. We can go a little deeper into what's going on. I get clients like that too, like they're kind of gridlocked, and I'm like, why aren't they getting better? Like, why? We're doing the right things, we're doing these pieces, and we really have to look beyond. Where I think most doctors and therapists will go, well, here's a medication, or let's just cover up the symptoms, right? But I think you and I go a lot deeper with that and go, wait a second. We're not looking at everything that's going on here. Let's step back, and see the bigger view of things. Right.
Well, because I really want to help people heal and be happy.
Yeah, and that's the drive.
Yeah. And there's so much to all of this. So it's really nice to collaborate with you in Constantly Healthy, because I find that when I can collaborate with other specialists, because some people need a physical therapy, not physical therapy, but they need a physical or structural kind of mediation. Then we need energetic through homeopathy, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, energetic through mental, emotional stuff, digging and unpacking the baggage.
It's the whole model, right? It's that you taught me that too.
Yeah.
You taught me the mind, body, spirit.
Right.
You're like, Constance, when we're taking care of Parker, we have to look at all aspects of his healing, his mind, his body, and his spirit, which is different again. And I love working with the Franz Center and you there as well, because we're not in competition.
Right.
And we're networking with people in the community right now. We had someone here, Matt from Recovery Systems, and he was training someone, and he goes, dude, we're not in competition. There are plenty of people to help.
Right.
We don't need to be like, oh, this is my client or this is your client. Right? We have to be open enough and collaborative enough that maybe I'm not the right therapist. Maybe I'm not. So let me find you someone that can help you. And I think that's, again, a little bit different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're really trying to serve the people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you have to treat the whole person.
Yes.
You have to.